Many thanks, Ibrahim and Hamidu, for that background report. Let's begin by introducing our guests just before we go into the conversation proper. And I'll start by introducing Lanre Latuyi, who is an electricity market analyst. We thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Kunle Kola Olubio is President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network. We thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Coming.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and let's go over to our Kanu studio. Dr. Abdurrahman Umar, Senior Academic Department of Electrical Engineering, Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainability Transition, Bayero University in Kanu, and he joins us from our Kanu studio. Dr. Umar, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you. And also Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, and he's also joining us via Zoom. Dr. Amadi, it's a pleasure, and we do appreciate your joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'd really like to start with you, and I think everyone will agree for us to start with you for obvious reasons. You have been at the helm of affairs at NERC, and there have been conversations around what has happened in Enugu, and everyone is talking about it. But one thing that has come out is the issue of constitutional responsibilities between NERC and states, electricity regulatory commissions. I'm just wondering if you could just put it into perspective, the scope of the responsibility of states regulatory commissions within the 2023 Electricity Act.
Well, thank you and good morning. First, let me say that I don't like to attend this kind of program because I'm on the road because of his NTA and my love and respect. So that's why I agreed to. I'm supposed to be speaking the next couple of minutes in a keynote as a keynote speaker somewhere. But again, back to the question. First, I think oftentimes Nigerians fail to pay attention to what's going on. And when it happens, they start, what the Americans would call Monday morning quarterbacking. We play a match on a Sunday in the American football, so-called soccer, football. Then the Monday morning they've scored goal. Monday morning start to quarterback, try to defend a goal scored. Now, let's get it very clear. The first is the Constitution that was amended, I think, under President Buhari, who signed into law the Constitutional Amendment. And that Constitutional Amendment removed the restriction that was on state governments in the previous Constitution. And that restriction was that state governors cannot get involved in regulating, either through elections, through the law or through the regulator, anything that concerns network, transmission, and distribution. Of course, the states could be involved in generation, the states could perhaps invest in distribution, but they cannot regulate, make laws as state assemblies or as a regulator regarding network. So that constitution removed it, and therefore states have all the powers, together with the federal government, to regulate all value chain of electricity. Now, the Electricity Act followed that through by us to following through in that language with a little caveat that when it concerns electricity that is going through the interstate, which makes sense, no state can regulate interstate trade. And secondly, if it involves the use of TCN, then the state cannot regulate everything because it can't regulate TCN. So that's the state of play right now, constitutionally. And the Electricity Act also says that if a state enacts a new law on electricity market, sets up a regulator, two conditions, then it can apply to NEC to get exemption, and NEC will grant it the exemption after some time and due process. So about 9 of those states have done that. I have been advising a couple of them. And what is clear now, I think the latest was, if I understand very well, Niger State, Imo, Enugu, Anambra, Abia, Ondo, Ekiti, Lagos, Edo, and a couple of 1 or 2 others. Okay, because this is what it means. It means that they are responsible now to fix everything about generation, distribution, and transmission of their own assets. And the same law now says to transition this new process, the DISCOs, who are regional monopolies, what we call private monopolies, we now have to create subsidiary companies for each of those states that want to opt out. So if you are in Abuja, as we are here now, and let's say Niger State, of course, Niger State is opting out. Niger State opts out. Then Abuja Disco will convert its Niger operation into a separate company, a subsidiary called whatever, let's say Gorara Power Company. So that Gorara Power Company will, because that makes, for the purpose of regulation, will be a unique company, even though it shares corporate and share relationship with Enugu Disco, Abuja Disco as the owner. That's so that will happen in Enugu. With that, therefore, Enugu Disco has to fashion its distribution regulation within what the so-called main power, or whatever they call it, now offers. So my understanding is that Enugu Disco has been the most thorough, of course, of all the discos. They have been the one that set up, in my view, the best transition. They had, most of the guys were from NEC, both the chairman, the commissioners, I think all of them, apart from one, were people who work under me. And they were somewhat talking to me. And I think what they did was to take the wholesale tariff. Now, this is important. Generation, because generating companies are not state-specific. They were companies that were licensed by NEC for the whole Nigeria. And we have only one national grid before now. We had power from each of the generation companies shared to different centers, states, their disco centers. And so this power comes from the national grid. So what Enugu has done is to recognize the tariff that NEC has set for distribution. They didn't alter it from what they told me. And what they have done now is to ask the main power company that is now serving them from the old Enugu Disco to give it its own costs. So they said that the company gave them, let's say, 10 billion. I'm not precise. And they now asked them to break it down, which is what regulators should do. They broke down the cost, and they discovered that after breakdown, the real cost comes to, let's say, 6 billion, just estimation, not accurate. Okay, so Enugu Disco claimed that they have not used that 6 billion as recoverable. Now, this is the way we do tariff. You don't just fix a price. It doesn't matter what the price is in the world, or what is reasonable or unreasonable. What the regulator does is to say, what are the real, prudently incurred costs you are using to serve your customer? If they get that cost and it is prudent, relevant, they will then put into your revenue requirement, and that means this is what you will recover from different customers. That's number one. So if Enugu is right, Abuja Disco, Mainframe Disco gave them cost that is less than what they estimated or what they told them was their cost. So they used it and gave them recovery. So that means the cost in Enugu does not necessarily have to be the same as the national cost, because the price in Enugu should not be the same, because the cost of serving Enugu customers does not necessarily have to be the same as the cost of serving Imo or serving Niger. Why? Customer density, customer number, type, topology, invested assets, new investments, they will differ from state to state. So that's number one. Number two is this. If there are components of this tariff that is subsidy, which is part of the debate we're hearing from NEC and others, and the Minister of Power. So if there's a subsidy element, the question then is, what's the nature of that subsidy? If it's a subsidy that the federal government, in its eminent domain, as the father of all, has put in the system, and Enugu takes advantage, that is legitimate, as long as the federal government has not pulled out that subsidy. Again, if it's a subsidy paid from a federation account, which means an account that Nigerian states own jointly, then Enugu is entitled and the federal government cannot exclude them. But if it's a tariff, a subsidy that is discretionary, meaning it's a federal account, federal government uses some money, the federal government can decide to say Enugu can continue to enjoy it, because that, by the way, the federal government owns overriding responsibility for citizens in Enugu state for access to reliable electricity. So this is I'm now putting both my regulatory hat and my constitutional scholar hat to tell you that this is how it works. So this therefore means that Enugu will be right to plug into that subsidy as well as a subsidy and use it to also reduce their own tariff. And the third and last point is this. The discos, I think, are panicking and trying to use, of course, they are entitled to use lobby and all this strategy. The fear is that there may be a domino effect, which is what happens when incident like this creates contagion. So different states will say, oh, this looks nice. Enugu has done what NEC cannot do. It has reduced the tariff for each citizen. People are happy. So we can do the same. And they begin to look and copy Enugu's methodology. And that might mean that the discos will end up not having enough revenue. Now, this is where the ministry's leadership come in. The leadership here will be two things. One, to make sure, to look at the methodology and get some real experts, not talking heads, not people who are close to the minister or people who support party and all that, and say, help us go through these methodologies. Are they methodologies that are cogent? Are they a right methodology? Would they really allow recovery of cost? Because if there is under recovery, then there will be under provision of service, and down the line, there will be collapse of the industry, and the federal government, as the one that has ultimate responsibility for the Nigerian citizens, need to assert itself and say, no, we can't allow a part of this country to have its good collapse because of poor methodology. So the federal government should be doing referral, review, and once they're satisfied that the states have followed the fundamentals of energy pricing and that they are really doing what they ought to do, they should not give any heed to disco hoopla, because that's part of the business. The business is to make more money, most times at the expense of citizens. And the second thing the federal government will then therefore do is to now look at the federal level, what are the things that are causing cost escalation that probably Enugu has made savings on? Because when I was next chairman in 2014, I was abused. And they said, oh, I want to help PDP election, 2015 PDP election. When I said, look, let's zero out the collection losses, because it cannot have a tariff that is increased by 300, 200%. It's rate shock, never allowed in the industry. And I said, we're going to put your collection at zero. You come and prove to us that each of your elements that you claim are right, correct, coherent and cogent and proven. If they've allowed me, if it wasn't politics and I've gone ahead, we would have been talking about this level of tariffs, because sometimes there are too many inefficiencies that the discos build into their model. And because we want to incentivize investment, customers pay inefficient price. So efficiency at two levels. Customers should pay only efficient price, which is a price that is efficiently incurred to serve customers. discos should also be rewarded efficient cost, which is cost that they incurred efficiently, not when they carry all their own losses, the things that they could control. Some bogus losses are told to the consumer. And that's what I tried to do. But when the new government came in, they blackmailed me, and then they asked us to reverse. Well, we reversed because we have to pay the government. And that's why we have, sometimes some of the figures are crazy. So,
all right. Dr. Amadi, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Amadi, for that elaborate opening shot. I get it sets further background to this conversation. But let's cross over to Kano, where we have Dr. Abdurrahman Umar. And I'm wondering, in your opinion, from where you stand, would you say that the Electricity Act anticipated this sort of conflict? And do you think that states can actually regulate grid power sustainably?
Having me? Yeah, to be candid, the Electricity Act anticipated some development, positive development, and as well anticipated some clashes like that, or like what happened in Enugu regarding EERC, that is Enugu Regulatory Commission. You see, the purpose of Regulatory Act 2023 is to allow states to regulate the activities of electricity within their jurisdiction. For what reason? For improved delivery, one. Number two, for more investment attraction. Number three, for improved efficiency. So you see, if the state can regulate its electricity while not achieving these three fundamental reasons for that act, I think that then we can say that's a problem. You see, that was why a year ago, when this Electricity Act was enacted, I advocated for state not only to consider the regulation aspect, but also to add the investment promotion aspect of it. In fact, I suggested states to call it State Regulatory and Investment Commission instead of just State Regulatory Commission. Yes, the aspect or the wing of regulatory aspect can be handled by NEC. Then the other aspect of investment could be handled by other relevant body. My reason for that is that I envisage this kind of clashes. You know, the state may be carried away by the regulatory power or the autonomy they got through this act, and emphasizes more on the regulatory aspect, forgetting about the consequences of the investment. For me, yes, under this kind of high inflation and wide spread of low income context faced in the country, reducing tariff is paramount to every citizen in the country. However, in my opinion, such kind of act should be allowed to occur naturally. There is a way. For instance, the state, after having the autonomy or the power to regulate and encourage investment in the electricity sector, they can look at possible ways of reducing this kind of burden on the general populace. For instance, they can start embarking on investment to go for possible deployment of what we call in engineering distributed generation. Distributed generation is a kind of generation whereby the power of all electricity is generated closer to the point of use. By doing that, definitely you are cutting down the cost of transporting the electricity power via national grid from far away places to your locality. You know, this is just similar to like a petroleum product we have at filling stations. If you are in Maiduguri or Gombe, far away from the refineries, possibly the cost of your landing cost of your electricity may likely go up or higher than what is obtainable in Lagos because of that cost of transportation. So now having the generation instead of at a far away places, having it closer to users, definitely the cost of that transportation, which is also embedded in the general tariff of the electricity, could be reduced. You can see this is one aspect. Second aspect, still from the aspect of investment, competitive environment can be created by bringing more investment into the state across the generation, transmission, and distribution. You know, the act not only allow us to generate, but also allow us to do the transmission aspect. For companies can do it, individual actors as well can do it. The only thing now, you know, the transmission has to be at a secondary level, meaning the transmission has to be within the state. So you can see by having multiple operators in the states, definitely natural competition will bring up natural cost reduction. In other words, the tariff may go down. You see, now another aspect, the state that can also look at it in a near future, instead of embarking on this regulatory tussle of power, is to look at the other alternative renewable energy. You see this policy, when they are bringing this policy, definitely we know from the policy aspect, because it's the policy that gives room for all this regulation. We know right from the beginning that the policy is going to be unique to each state, depending on the geography of that state. I mean, the resources the state is having. For instance, like now, Lagos, most of it is talking about gas generation, gas distribution, and the rest, while places like Kano or state like Kano or Katsina is talking about solar or renewable energy. So you can see all these peculiarities are applied to this sector. Also, the capacity of the people, the affordability of the citizens in the state is also a matter. Also, the economic stress is going on, and the economic power of such state is also contributory reason to look at. So, and this can be seen from the policy developed so far by some various states. You can see each one has its own component of policy, what we call the problem aspect, or what we call the policy statement aspect of the policy document. Yes, for the implementation could be similar, and also for the state electricity law could be similar, but this kind of policy that we are talking about that will bring changes of tariff and other things are what we call developmental policy, and which could be unique to every state. So to really speaking, 2023 Electricity Act envisage that, and really accept that uniqueness of each state. And eventually, definitely, this is not a backlash, to be candid. This is just the beginning, because in a near future, we are going to see different tariffs across different states because of this mentioned reason I mentioned. For instance, the resources, if Kano will be able to be producing its power or electricity at an average of 100 naira per kilowatt hour, definitely places like Lagos, because their major source is gas or fossil fuels, their rate could be around maybe 150 kilowatt per hour. So you can see eventually there could be these differences, and these differences has come to stay. It's not going, it's part of the development, and we envisage that. In fact, coincidentally, what will tell you that coincidentally now, currently at the National Assembly, there are things ongoing. The same act is being amended. Is tagged Electricity Act, Electricity Bill 2025 is being amended, and part of the recommendation is coincidental to what is happening in Enugu. That will tell you, yes, the act has foreseen that, because number one, part of it is they are talking about the framework for subsidy, which comes under the item of PCAF, that is Power Consumer Assistance Fund. They also talk about overlapping or fragmented regulation, which comes under federal and state harmonization framework. So through this, they are trying to create a national forum for electricity, whereby state and federal regulators will be harmonizing any upcoming events and resolving any conflicts arising. So you can see this problem has already been envisaged. And also part of it, they are also recommending National Electric Power Policy Council, which will be overseeing high level of policy alignment in the country. So you can see concurrently, while this event is going on about Enugu and the rest, and the federal and the state National Assembly, this kind of amendment is going on to tackle most of 90% of the problems mentioned above. Thank you very much.
Dr. Umar, thank you. We'll get back to you in a moment. We understand that Dr. Mahdi, of course, would soon be leaving us. So let's quickly put the next question across to him so that he can, respond to some of the constitutional and operational framework and clarify some of those things for us before we get into the nitty-gritty. And it's all clear that what is in contention really is not probably, I don't know, I stand to be corrected, not the methodology or the model for which the Enugu State Regulatory Commission arrived at the amount, the tariff reduction rate. But what the NEC is querying is whether or not the state regulatory commissions can, reduce tariff, can regulate, and if it does so, whether NEC is asking Enugu State Regulatory Commission in this instance, to be responsible for the subsidy gap and all that. But Dr. Madi, if I get what you said earlier on right, that in the amended part of the Constitution or rather of the Act, that the Constitution did not allow or does not allow states to regulate the distribution aspect of in the electricity production chain. And I'm wondering if that is so. What is how do you now then explain the 2023 Electoral Act signed into law by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which gave states the autonomy, the power to generate, to distribute, but not to transmit, if I'm wrong? Yourself.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. I can go ahead.
Yes, please.
So I said before the 2023 Electricity Act came into being, the 1999 Constitution did not allow states to regulate distribution, generation, or anything. Now, the new Constitution signed by Buhari now allowed them, and so Tinubu signed a consequential Electricity Act. So today, both the Electricity Act and the Constitution are aligned. They allow states to do all this. I don't think NEC can make that kind of argument because it will appear very illiterate, in my view, and elementary. Enugu State has a right to fix its own tariff. Even if they like, they can fix it dangerously bad. It's a constitutional right of the state, not of the Enugu regulator or NEC. And by the way, NEC has no constitutional authority. NEC is exercising the constitutional authority of the federal government, the Section 5 power of the president. That's what NEC exercises. This is what I teach in administrative law. So NEC is an agent of President Tinubu to man the electricity sector. Enugu regulator is an agent of the Enugu state government, and President Tinubu's Electricity Act has now aligned with the new constitutional order by authorizing Enugu State to do what it is doing. So no debate. Enugu State has a right to define its own tariff. Now, this is the only complication. There are what we call shared services, and that's where I think the ministry do a great job. They didn't walk through a transition to help each of the states understand. For example, TCN is still a common service. When I gave a lecture, TCN MD then was so happy that I brought to them and said, TCN is now like any other company owned by the federal government. It can work with the states, and the states will pay fees that NEC has mandated. So what Enugu or any state can do is to take those fees for TCN and put it in their tariffs, because they can't regulate TCN. They can only buy services from TCN. They can even have a contract with TCN, and TCN can even give them a lower price. That's fair. So the same with the generating companies now. Until states create their own generation, states can, if they have their own generation plan, they can remove themselves from the federal generator, except the fact that there's a contract. So there are two elements, law and contract. there's a contract between Enugu Disco and the national system operator, or the embed, to the PPA, power purchase agreement, to buy power. So as long as the Enugu Disco buys that power and sends a component of that power to Enugu, Enugu will recognize and pay that wholesale price. That's the end. When it comes to Disco, the Discos are now subsidiaries doing their own business in each of those states. So the Enugu Disco that is now called Main Power is now an independent company deemed to be licensed by Enugu regulator. So they're going to give them their cost, and Enugu will freely set up the tariffs. It doesn't concern NEC. How does it concern NEC? NEC has no more jurisdiction over Enugu. If there's power outage in Enugu, it's not NEC's problem. It is Enugu Disco, Enugu regulator's problem. If people are overpaid, it's not Tinubu's problem. Only that Tinubu, as president of Nigeria, can talk to the governor and say, look, this is causing trouble. Yes, that's at the level of governor to president. But at the level of NEC, NEC has no role. In fact, NEC allowed the train to move and sail through. Then start, after it has gone, to start talking about, control. NEC has nothing to do here. What NEC has to do here is to keep on doing the wholesale tariff that it does for the generators that are now collectively owned. But the generators are selling power to these states that now have their own independent regulator and independent power sellers. So the component of generation is fully captured. Enugu has not altered it, so there should be no problem. What Enugu has done is to reduce the retail tariff and abolish so-called bandwidth A. Now, again, let's get back to those, whatever I call it, category A that people pay for. That is not, it's NEC that designed it to recover money. Anyone can choose not to have that band A, band B, band C, and create a different customer class. That's what it means to be an independent regulator with the power that the Constitution has given to a state. And it's unconstitutional for NEC or anybody to try to stop a power given to a state to self-regulate itself on distribution. So as long as Enugu decides to say, we're not going to charge band A people this amount, it means that the real cost of serving that band is less in Enugu than what the NEC. I don't want to say whether NEC costs. I have my issue. I've already addressed it to NEC officials. I don't think band A, band B made a lot of sense to me, but it's their choice. They have the power, they did it. So Enugu, it can't force the same pricing on Enugu. It's elementary. It can't do that. There's no constitutional or regulatory logic that says that if the price of power for this customer class in Abuja is X, it should be the same in Kano. And by the way, in America everywhere in the world.
Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Of course, you are emphasizing the independence, the significant independence that the states have to regulate the power that comes to them. We thank you very much. But let me get to Lanre Latuyi. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much.
Now, what exactly drives tariff hikes, for instance, in Band A?
There are two sides of a coin to this discussion. So depending on which perspective you're trying to talk from. Let me correct an impression. The issue of Band A is not arbitrary. It's not just something that just came out of nowhere. It is because of the fact that the regulator, in conjunction with federal government, was trying to reduce the burden of subsidy on the consumer, on the federal government. The subsidy burden for 2024 was about 3.2 trillion naira until the introduction of Band A tariff. So that Band A tariff lowered that subsidy burden to about 1.9 trillion naira.
In other words, it wasn't service-driven, it was just cost-driven.
Yeah, it was service-driven in the sense that there was an SLA for discos to be able to make power available for at least 20 hours every day. And there are mechanisms to actually measure that if you don't provide that number of hours, maybe for 7 consecutive days, that feeders can actually be put down to Band B. So that's just by the issue of Band A tariff. So let me talk about this issue of tariff by Enugu, main power from Enugu State, and what NEC has said. This is it. The Electricity Act 2023 granted states to regulate power generation, transmission, and distribution. That is the law. The law is quite different from the practicability of it, of the operation of power system. So the question is, yeah, you'll be granted the rights to do that, but is it feasible? Is it practicable?
But the law is meant to be obeyed.
The law is meant to be obeyed, but is it practicable in the real sense given our reality in the country today? So, and what is happening in this issue of tariff, what is causing a problem is just about incorporation of subsidy in Enugu State tariff, in main power tariff. What Enugu State has done is the fact that, in our tariff, we are not going to recognize the full cost of electricity, which is the cost-reflective tariff. Right now in the sector, the weighted average price in the wholesale market is 112 naira. What Enugu State has recognized in their tariff is just about 45 naira, leaving a shortfall of about 60-something naira to be borne by the federal government. So, and this is what NEC has responded. We are trying to move away from subsidy regime. It's no longer practicable. The federal government has said times without number that we don't really have money to pay subsidy. So Enugu State, now that you'll be granted autonomy, recognize the full cost in the wholesale market. This is it. Though the states have the power to regulate on generation, transmission, and distribution, they don't have that facilities now. Until states are able to have their own power system, that means the generation plants, the dispatch and the control center, the transmission line, then it is at that point that you can say that they have their own electricity market. Right now, that's I hear that's a law that states now regulate electricity market. No, what they regulate right now is just the distribution segment of the electricity value chain. And if you look at the National Integrated Electricity Policy, it is stated there that NEC will be regulating the wholesale market, states will be regulating the distribution or the retail segment. So right now, the wholesale market, what is the wholesale market? The wholesale market is the centralized pool where all the generators in Nigeria pool their energy being generated. That is still being regulated by NEC. So what NEC is saying that now is that, if you want to come to this market regulated by NEC, you have to pay the full cost of generation, which is 112 naira, and that has to be incorporated in your tariff. So, but Enugu is saying that, but there's still subsidy being provided by the federal government. Though this subsidy is not cash-backed, the subsidy projection for 2023 is about 2.3 trillion naira. What is appropriated in the budget is probably about 900 billion, not cash-backed, and there's no assurance that that subsidy is going to come. So that subsidy sits in the book of the GENCOs as receivables. So it's the GENCOs that bears this burden of subsidy that is not being paid. Now we hear of 4 trillion naira that the federal government is going to pay. If federal government clears that debt today, in the next 2 or 3 years, that is 4 trillion naira will be accumulated again until we move away from this market regime that we operate in the sector. So NEC is saying that we want to do away with subsidy. Enugu is saying that no, the federal government is still paying subsidy in quotes. So instead of you recognizing 45 naira in your tariff, recognize the full cost, the weighted average wholesale price of 112 naira. And Enugu State say, no, I'm not going to do this. As long as other Nigerians, in quote, as they enjoy this subsidy being provided in quote by the federal government. So that is the bone of contention.
All right, but
sorry, Victor, I was just going through the explanations given by Enugu State Regulatory Commission. Just a point. It said breaking this across the various tariff bands means that band A will pay 160 while other bands B, C, and D and E are frozen. He said band A at 160 will help main power to manage rate shock, and if the subsidy is removed, savings will assist them in stabilizing the tariff over a defined period of time. Then it went on to say, Nevertheless, at all times, the tariff will be cost reflective and will not require any state subsidy.
Thank you very much. Before coming to your studio, some of us were reluctant to speak on this issue. I know the battle I had to go through with WADA and so many of your staff to convince us, because the privatization of the electricity sector, the whole essence of it is to de-risk the electricity ecosystem. And what Enugu Electricity Regulatory Commission has done is to further increase the exposure of the market to risk. We're talking about investors' apathy in the Nigerian power sector. You see, we have a model of regulatory ecosystem. The intention of the federal parliament, you see, Enugu State is crying more than the bereaved. The intention of the federal parliament, the Electricity Act you're talking about, the amendment of the Constitution, was initiated and driven by the federal arm of the Federation. That's the National Assembly. They were the drivers of this amendment, and we call it executive bill or whatever. They were the drivers, and they gave this liberty to Enugu State government. So Enugu State government's position is as if those who gave them the leverage do not even wish them well. The federal government has been taking a lot of burden, and the sense in it is that federal government feels that in the concept of devolution of power, if some responsibility are given to the state, they could micro-manage some sector effectively. It's not just electricity. You know, there are key aspects of the economy that were hitherto under exclusive list, like inland waterway and what have you. And what we have done in the current dimension is to make sure the state had the leverage. Where are we coming from? Between 1979 to 1983, Dr. Sam Mbakwe of Imo State created what we call the IPP. Amaraku, the old Imo State covers the present Imo State and Abia State. Amaraku IPP, Independent Power Plant. Students of school age, their parents were levied 10 naira then as contribution to the investment in the sector. And in 2011, there are 14 IPPs, independent power plants, that came to Nigeria, investors willing to invest, and they raised bond for federal government to encourage them to invest. Because of the bureaucratic bottleneck of MBET, Ministry of Finance, I was directly involved, negotiating with multilateral department of Ministry of Finance, and they were frustrated. So what Enugu State government need to do is to replicate what Sam Mbakwe has done. Create the market first. In an agro value chain, you say from farm to gate. The farm, you have to have a farm before you now have the barn. Enugu State government, what they need to do first is to make sure that, like any other state, create institutional framework, legal framework, and regulatory framework. That is the ecosystem.
Which framework? They already have a regulatory framework.
What we are saying, the electricity itself, if you look at the petroleum subsector, distribution of petroleum products, if Enugu State government, for example, legislates on the price of pump prices of petrol, let's use it in local parlance, and say, okay, we want our pump price to be 120 naira, as against 800 or 900 naira. That means that the petroleum tanker and marketers will not deliver petroleum product to Enugu State. And who will suffer? My constituents, which is consumer. Now what Enugu State government is trying to do through its delegated agent, as amplified by Dr. Sam Ahmadi, is to prevent electricity consumers in Enugu from enjoying great source power supply.
How?
You cannot give
because they say this is in the interest of
no, this is political
consumers.
No, we say just like Dr. Sam Ahmadi has said. Yes, Dr. Sam Ahmadi is a politician, is a gubernatorial aspirant, and we can read through the line that as a
he's
politician.
He's an academic.
Let's put he's my very good friend. Let's put it this way.
No, hold on.
Mr.
Hold on, please. He's on this program not as a politician. And he has not spoken as a politician. He has only answered our question. So I think.
It's either on the two sides.
He has prerogative, of his.
Okay, let's address.
So let me Just let me ask you. Now, the Enugu State Regulatory Commission says, look, we have reduced this tariff on distribution, not on any other, for which they have constitutional powers to do that. What is wrong in that? Is it that it is wrong, or that it is putting the cart before the horse?
Exactly. You see, I just laid a background that in Plateau State, for example, maybe in the next few days, I'm supposed to be in the Plateau to do a further study. In Plateau State, since 1954, we have the NESCO, and we have what later became Jos Electricity Distribution Company. For over 4 decades, NESCO and Jos Disco, as it were.
Yes, sorry, Kunle, I think we need to talk. Yes.
Let's quickly get to Dr. Sam Amadi before he leaves. I understand you will leave at the break in a few minutes. I'm just worried about what regulatory risks that you see ahead, given what is playing out now and the existing law.
Thank you. So let me take about one by one. I've been speaking here as an expert, not as a politician. By the way, I haven't been a special advisor to Senate President over 10 years ago. Having worked as special advisor for foreign affairs over 7 years ago, and chairman of NEC for 5 years, professor of law, constitutional law, administrative law from Harvard Law School. I think I earned some respect on this subject matter. So I'm not here. I'm not from Enugu State, by the way, and I won't run election in Enugu. I'm from Imo State. So the point is very clear. Look, I'm happy that the hosts, you guys perhaps seem to understand this more than the experts. In Nigeria, people make a lot of noise, what they don't know. Now, I have 3 issues and questions to answer that question. First, the other panelist said something. It says, there is a generation tariff. Let me say it again. Let's stop confusing what people. Enugu Disco has accepted wholly, entirely, the generation tariff that NEC has given. It's not altering it. So what's the problem? It has not altered transmission tariff because it doesn't have snow power. What's the problem? What it has done, and I want to make this clear, there is nothing called cost-efficient tariff in the air. I don't understand why Nigerians don't want to learn. Cost-reflective means a particular cost. So, for example, the cost of serving Kano and serving Abuja can never be the same from a distribution perspective. Because it's a national, look, I'm speaking as an expert, PhD. I don't want, nobody should challenge me. You can't serve the same cost everywhere. Look at America. I lived in Boston, Massachusetts. Prices of electricity, okay, let's make it very clear. What is distribution cost? Distribution cost has 3 components. It has CAPEX, capital cost. It has variable cost, O&M, operation maintenance cost, variable and fixed. All these costs, I give an example. NTA is here in Abuja. The cost of running NTA in Lagos and Abuja can't be the same. Very elementary things. What happens is because NEC is regulating a national market. Every disco, and I give an example, look at the cost for tariffs that NEC does for all the discos. They are different, there are variations. And I'm going to pay 1 million if, as a fee, fine, if any NEC staff tests anything different. NEC does tariff. It does what's called cost efficient. They'll ask the disco to submit their costs. So the cost for Enugu is slightly different from the cost from Lagos, even though the NEC own this thing. What I'm trying to say is this. If Enugu, and that's why I would ask all of us, everybody, all the experts, go and get their methodology. The problem with Nigerian debate is that everybody's an expert, but nobody tries to read. I would like NEC to come and explain to NTA that we have reviewed Enugu methodology, just like NEC has a methodology. That methodology did not capture X, Y, Z. Therefore, it underpriced electricity. If the methodology is what I know and what I have received from them and what I've heard from them, that the disco, which is what NEC does not fix, NEC is not a spirit. We don't fix tariff through Holy Spirit or through intuition. NEC writes to the discos, send us your cost profile. They give to NEC. NEC sits in its office, review those costs and approve. We call it revenue requirement, approved revenue requirement. That means NEC is saying that you are going to serve 5,000 megawatts with 5 billion, made up of capital costs, made up of variable O&M, operation maintenance costs, made up of fixed O&M. NEC looks at them, run the numbers, and they said approved recovery. NEC now asks them to go and design how they recover the money. And so they give you different customer. Again, there are cross subsidies, meaning some customer class can subsidize others based on NEC. Two issues here are very clear. One, the subsidy issue. Assuming there's a subsidy on this tariff, and this Enugu state government saying we are going to free ride on federal government, this is now constitutional theory and administrative law. Then it's the federal government who say, no, you can't take advantage of our tariff. And therefore, Enugu, take that out and put in your own money. Enugu has to pass it to their customer, or the state government can put in the money. Now, this is the principle, and I will leave on this. The principle of tariff making is simple. If you don't want to pass any cost to customers, for many reasons, for example, in Europe, there are subsidies because they can pay it. In fact, the Ukraine-Russian war cost Europeans to put billions because they don't want to be exposed to Russia, and therefore the solar and other renewable cannot generate enough. They put a subsidy to reduce. So subsidy is a fiscal policy element. The federal government decides how much they can put in based on their resources and the burden they want to pass to their customer. So if the federal government pulls away their subsidy, like they are saying, they want to phase it out, then the Enugu has to take responsibility to say, either we'll put the subsidy or we'll pass it on to customer. So first elementary knowledge, cost-efficient tariff is not a number. It means the tariff that actually allows an operator to recover its prudent cost. It's not fixed in the air. So I agree with them. You must have cost efficient. What Enugu is saying is that based on the cost that the DISCO has given us, I would like our panelists to also ask mainframe, send to us what is sent to Enugu. Let's run the numbers. Enugu says they told us that their cost is A. We said, okay, break it down. They broke it down. It came to A minus 5. Why would you give somebody A if their real cost is A minus 5? I don't know how to, as a teacher, I'm trying to explain it very clear. So I'm not supporting Enugu or federal government. I was a lecturer chairman, and I'm saying that if Enugu missed out any element of the real cost, then we can query Enugu because that will lead to problems. But if
Dr. Madi, we thank you. You want to, yes.
We have to let Dr. Madi go because you have another program and because we have to also go on break. So we would like to thank you very much. We will take the conversation from here. We wish you could stay till the end of the program, but we'll take the conversation from where you have left off. So Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of the NERC, we thank you very much for your time and the thoughts that you have brought, the perspectives you have brought to this program today. We'll pause here for a break, and Good Morning Nigeria will continue after this break. Please.
All right, welcome back to the program. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and your watch, of course, we're having a conversation on the latest development within the electricity tariff, processes in Enugu. So we have Dr. Umar, who, of course, is in our Kano studio. Dr. Umar, we've let you sitting idle for a while. I'm just wondering, in all of this, if the high band A tariff is actually the one that is giving the discos, the avenue to generate revenue, And now that, for instance, in Enugu, that band has been reduced from 200 and something to 160. It will mean that we will have to begin to look at other ways of assisting, the discos to be able to, shore up their revenue. And in this regard, I'm also looking at the fact that most homes don't even have the infrastructure, like Kunde here said, in terms of metering.
Truly speaking, that shortfall has a serious is going to have bring a serious impact into the system. Actually, you see, the shortfall is not actually supposed to start coming now. It's not a good time to start exposing the system to this kind of risks. I think the system, especially the state market itself, is not ripe enough to start facing this kind of risks in terms of investment. So in other words, while we commend the Enugu State Regulatory Commission for taking that bold step, which shows they have really understood the real regulatory power asserted to them. And also we have to commend them for, in fact, being the first state in the country to really start operationalizing the avenues of 2023 Electricity Act in order to make progress in the electricity sector. However, that shortfall, instead of the ERC to embark on this new regime of risking itself, I think on the other hand, it should look at other sources in order to support the discourse in the state, in order not to have a liquidity crisis or any shortfall in the cash flow. Other sectors, as I said earlier, can be looked upon, such as bringing more investors into the state to create adequate liquidity in the state, so that the discourse will not start to cry over any possible. In other words, there is need for shock absorbers rather to be created in the electricity market first before starting exposing it to this kind of risks. So in other words, the discourse should work with the regulatory commission to see that investment in the sector is really enhanced, so that this kind of shortfall may not have negative impact over their operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Umar. Let me get back here in the studio. I saw you shaking your head vigorously when Dr. Amadi was speaking. But to take it away from Dr. Amadi, is the move by the Enugu State, the Electricity Regulatory Commission, economically sound, in your opinion, or it is a dangerous precedent?
I'm not going to answer categorically to that. It is the prerogative of the State Regulatory Commission of Enugu State to determine the end user's tariff. Nobody's debating that with them. I'm not going to debate that with them. So if they set the end user's tariff at 20 naira, they have the power to do so. If they set it at 10 naira, they have the power to do so. I think the bone of contention here is that, and in response to Dr. Amadi said, I think it's not just being, maybe he doesn't have clarity enough about how tariffs are designed, and he's a professor of law, not a professor of power system or electricity market. So I studied market design, so I understand market very well.
But he ran the NERC, which is some significant experience.
He ran when it was an integrated vertical power system. When it was so, we are moving to a liberalized market, so he didn't run NEC when NEC is at this stage. So I'm not disputing that. I don't even want to talk about.
It's not here. We don't want to.
I don't want to talk about that. So is it economically sound for Enugu State to have done what they did? Like I said, it is in their power to set the tariff. Nobody has the right to contest that with them. Not me, not NEC, and not federal government. But what is being said is that USC buying power at the wholesale market. USC buying power, so you have to be able to buy power at the generation cost, the weighted average price in the wholesale market. The price is 112 naira. So what Enugu Discos did in that tariff modeling is to use the cost of generation to be 45 naira. So let's get this clarity. So the fact that he's saying that they've not touched generation cost is not totally true. So, but this is the argument from Enugu State. They said that there's something called disco remittance obligation, DRO. So disco remittance obligation is that portion that every discos in Nigeria, this is the portion of the embedded invoice that you have to pay. That is the generation cost. So, and that the federal government will now pay the outstanding in form of subsidy. So Enugu State is now saying, this is the logic behind it, that, okay, if we use 45 naira, our domestic disco remittance obligation, our remittance obligation is still going to be met by this tariff of 160 naira. So that's quite different from the fact that you have to pay the true cost of electricity at the wholesale market. So what Enugu Disco used in that tariff modeling is 45 naira, while the actual cost of electricity is 112 naira. So why did they use 145 naira? Because, in quote, they expect federal government to cover the subsidy. Subsidy.
Yes.
And why is that so? Because they feel that, oh, you cannot start subsidy removal on us. Every Nigerian is still enjoying subsidy. So why not Enugu too? Do you understand me? And the claim that that subsidy is being paid from the federation account is quite wrong. Subsidy is not being paid from the federation account. So because that was another argument from the state that, oh, the federation account belongs to everybody, the 3 arms of the federal of the government. So we have a right to lay claim on it. So like I said, Enugu State has the power, the regulatory commission has the power to set tariff even at 0 naira. And nobody's going to dispute that. But when you are coming to the wholesale market, regulated by NEC, buy at 112 naira, no, not at 45 naira. Because the subsidy you are expecting the federal government is going to pay, that money is not available anywhere.
Landy, let's even be practical.
Yep.
You understand? Because Victor and I are neither here nor there. We're just, talking.
Yeah, I'm trying to make a very balanced
view. We're
view.
just talking for the people. So let us even look at the practical side of it. Even when the band A is at 200 and something, people are still not getting adequate supply of electricity. People are still paying, what do you call it? Estimated bills. Mm-hmm. People are not metered. So it falls back on the discourse. Now that the tariff has been reduced, their revenue shortfall, there'll be revenue shortfall. Will they be able to, have the strength to purchase from NBET, so as to, meet their revenue expectations?
Well, if I may respond to that, yes. The truth of the matter is that the move by Enugu Disco, like said by earlier speakers, is quite commendable. There's something you call political bragado or regulatory grandstanding. Nobody will have known of the existence of Enugu Disco if not for this buhaha or this attention that they have called to themselves. So on that note, jokingly you say it's quite commendable. But in reality, the consumers even want electricity tariff, as I speak here, to be 50 naira. But the truth of the matter is that we are running a federation where federal government through the NNPC have fixed the pump price, like I was trying to say, of petroleum product. If Kogi State government, for example, say they want the prices as empowered by law as a federation unit, they want the pump price of petroleum product to be 100 or 200 naira. That means the entire Kogi State will be starved of supply. So the great source, there are clear line of delineation and demarcation. You cannot give what you don't have. The Enugu State government or any other state government need to create the market. And in creating the market, you do economic mapping of the state. In Enugu State, you have abundant coal, clean coal, which is an energy source. You can use renewable energy source, which will be like Enugu State government can give licenses to a local government or senatorial district for sector-specific generation within the senatorial district or local government or intrastate. When they give licenses for generation, transmission, and distribution, they will set the parameters and KPI for intrastate electricity ecosystem. That has not been created. Consumers, our major concern, while we advocated for the Constitution and the Electricity Act that we have to be in alignment, was the mismatch that we're having. Now that the instruments have been given to the state, it is not for the state to be in conflict with federal institutions. There need to be level of collaboration.
What are you doing about the metering to ensure, because this issue of metering has always been there, and you are speaking for the consumer?
Yeah, in native parlance, Yoruba will say "Efetele palapalapa." We are leaving the cancerous element and dressing it. The issue of metering, the issue of poor investment in transmission grid. Take, for example, we have a 415 billion naira debt sitting on the neck of federal government. That has been dimensioned into 217 that federal government has agreed to pay to TCN. The electricity sector, as it were, is in a big mess financially. There are a lot we are not talking about. Two wheeling charges. Generation will generate, transmission will transmit, there are auxiliary costs and wheeling charges. 417 is a debt to TCN alone. Now, the Ministry of Finance through the federal government agreed to pay 217 billion. The discos have not been able to pay the balance from where federal government stopped. We call it legacy debt, 217. The remaining of about 200 and something billion, the discos have not been able to pay. Now, as we speak to you, the CAPES, OPES, the discos now, they are technically insolvent. There is an agency of government, they acquire a lot of debt from foreign intervention from federal government. You talk about electricity subsidy. Federal government gives promissory notes every year for electricity subsidy. Federal government have over the years not been able to prove that they have the capacity because of paucity of fund to pay the subsidy. So the generation company goes to the bank. And you know, in Nigerian bank, if you're going to take credit facility, you're going to take it at 35%. They go to the bank. There are several occasions I've been to the minister office, Fashola. I'll meet the likes of the investors in generation. You need to see them. They go and raise bond. And so what the state government need to do first, in not missing the step, create the electricity market. They need a partial risk guarantee. Any investors, being a Nigerian investor, partnering with a foreign investor, they need a partial risk guarantee. State cannot issue that partial risk guarantee because if a state take credit or loan from any development finance institution, they will be inked against the balance of Nigeria. That is our foreign reserve or foreign banks.
Which is why the National Assembly gets
like you have the case that the Ministry of Justice and Office of the NSA, one of the presidential jets was seized by a country because of a transaction between a state government involved and a foreign company. And all they need to do is garnishing order against our investment, our bank account, or our property. So state cannot issue partial guarantee. It is African Development Bank and World Bank, and they will deal with the Ministry of Finance. And this. So these are the things that the state need to do: get partial risk guarantee, pull call option agreement, and all the collateralization and security that is needed for this. Electricity is priced internationally.
We are fast running out.
So what we are saying, the state needs to create the market, create the incentive for investment, create the enabling, do economic mapping. Each of the senatorial districts, which of the electricity sources based on energy needs is available. Now, who investors? They could be off-grid, they could be embedded, they could be sector-specific to cluster and agro, so that will provide my constituents the opportunity for alternative and competition. That is what the state needs to be focusing on.
Yes, we have to quickly take this. Yes. Solomon says he lives in Katankwe Extension. 3 weeks ago, he observes that the number of units for his area was reduced from 10. For 10,000 naira, he says it was reduced to 22 units. When he inquired, AEDC says Katankwe Extension has been switched to Band A. Unfortunately, since 3 weeks ago till now, we've hardly had light for 7 hours a day. And when the light comes, it is not stable. We keep taking and bringing it. They keep taking and bringing it every 30 minutes. Kindly tell AEDC to rectify this. We don't mind paying the bill, but they should give us the service. This is from Arabika in the poll, Lifecam Abuja. I appreciate the discussion. Thank Dr. Amadi for deep knowledge of the industry and education to listeners, broadens his knowledge. However, renewable energy is the best way to go, but government must support acquisition of the necessary tools to ensure efficient alternative power supply. And we also have Alade Tunde sending in his own contributions, but generally he says tariff may also be used as a form of taxation or revenue generation for the government. I know you have
all right, I have just a couple, and this first one is from Pat. What is the meaning of Band A, Band B? Some states pay higher, while some states pay less. As citizens, why should we have to pay for certain Band C, Band Z to have constant power supply? Okay? And from Kolumba Umana in Uyo, he said, good morning to everyone in the studio. Estimated billing is a serious crime against humanity. In Itu Road, axis of Uyo in Akwa Ibom State, in a residential area, PHCN gives an average bill of 120,000 naira per month, even if you stay in a 2-bedroom flat. The fraud by marketers in PHCN must be checked. In some compounds, you see 2 separate bills that same month. Prepaid meters aren't available again. Well, I think he's making reference to PHCN. We are not in the era of PHCN.
Port Harcourt PHC, Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, PHDC.
PHDC.
I know.
PHCN.
Yeah, okay, just a final note from you. I'm thinking that having secured the 2023 the Electricity Electoral Act.
Electricity
Act, thank you. Shouldn't the conversation now shift to this? We know the subsidy removal on fuel. We know what it has done. Shouldn't we also begin to have this conversation? You are an advocate, on this subsidy on electricity.
I didn't get that question clearly.
No, shouldn't we begin to brace up for subsidy removal
on electricity?
Okay,
let me just state it clearly. We've been talking about all the problems, but we're not talking about the solutions or the way forward. Like I said earlier,
he mentioned some.
It's either the federal government. It's either the federal government continues to pay the subsidy, or we brace up and we remove this subsidy. And we're going to remove the subsidy. That means we're going to transit this current market stage to wholesale competition electricity market, whereby let Gencos and Discos buy, let market forces determine the price. So until we get to the stage of competitive electricity market, this stage, the subsidy regime is still going to continue and it's not sustainable.
Thank you. And
particularly what is of great concern to us is that the aggregate of the input used in arriving at the tariff, padded cost of gas and other padded costs that is embedded to the cost of the tariff, as it were. I want to align with the last speaker that the way to go is competition and alternative. If we have competition, the federal government through the custom allow importation of renewable energy equipment, solar panel, gives fiscal and non-fiscal incentive. If I have solar panel that is cheaper, as against the customs and FRS seeing this as source of generating revenue for federal, going to bring down the cost of electricity and the total quantum that will come, that become off-grid, we have to give customers competitive prices. Yeah,
all right.
That's the way to go.
Kola Olubio, President, Nigerian Consumer Protection Network. We thank you very much for your time and your thoughts on the program. Let me also thank Dr. Abdraman Umar, who is a senior academic, Department of Electrical Engineering and Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Transition. He joined us from Kano. He teaches at the Bayero University, Kano. We thank you very much for your time and for your contributions on the program. And finally, from here, let me thank Larry Latui, who is an electricity market analyst. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you both for coming.
Thanks so much.
And Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of the NERC, who left us much earlier, we thank you very much for joining us on this conversation. I guess it's something we may have to revisit someday.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to be part of this program tomorrow. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurazak.
And I am Victor Azu. We appreciate your company. Let's see you again tomorrow.